So, as with probably everybody here, we've always tried to participate in anything that goes in terms of PTS and TPS, so opportunistic as a start, but we've always tried to seek out anything that we can participate in. But unfortunately, those haven't always overlapped with our scope of accreditation. So UCAS, our accreditation body, the United Kingdom Accreditation Service, they've given us a couple of findings over the years about our inadequate participation in relevant proficiency testing schemes. So initially, the creation of the EURLs offered us the possibility of access to PTS. But this has become more challenging in recent years. Just to give you an example, so it is possible certainly for the UK to participate. So last year we participated in a scheme that was run by NIB, but for us to do that required a letter with a justification from us to the head of our NPPO, and then the NPPO then had to write to the EU to ask if it was okay. So it took quite an effort to participate in that. And then meanwhile, our accreditation body was leaving us with no doubt, was becoming increasingly insistent that we do something. So in consultation with them, we agreed that we'd use the interlaboratory comparison route to see if we could fulfill, well, keep them happy, basically. So we got together with our colleagues north of the border. So there was a group discussion between FERA and SASA to identify where we had overlaps on our scope of accreditation and what opportunities we had to be able to do a very small interlaboratory comparison between the two labs. We're all busy, and we needed to kind of get something together in fairly short order because we knew there were audits coming up. So we agreed a plan for a really simple approach to exchange blind samples between the labs. So bacteriology, I think, were first out of the blocks. So for that, they focused on Ralstonia solanacearum and Clavibacter cepadonicus. I'm a virologist, so you're going to have to forgive me. Some of these names are too complicated. So FERA and SASA, we basically, what we did is we took negative potato extracts and then spiked those extracts and organised them in such a way that they were sort of blind samples that were being sent to each lab. At the end of that, both FERA and SASA correctly identified their extract. Everyone was happy. It was a great start, so that was brilliant. Virology sent out some samples next, so we did a few more different things here. Blind samples, again, were sent for a variety of, so we've got tomato black ring, BRSV, and we also exchanged viroids, possibly viroids as well, and that worked well. We then, SASA sent FERA some TBRV and BRSV, and those were correctly identified as well. I know SASA, it says SASA identified 3 out of 4 samples. When SASA went back to those tests and tests with a different method, that was all worked out fine. So in a way, it shows that the exchange worked because it did identify, a repeat analysis using a different method worked really well. So that was a good test of the exchange. So yeah, SASA sent us some possibly viroid samples, and again, those were all correctly identified using PCR and sequencing. Entomology went down the route of sending samples on slides, so that was to sort of look at morphological ID, and we picked Bemisia tabaci and Thrips palmi. So these were samples that we previously identified at FERA, and those got sent to SASA. They were identified really quickly, and that worked out really well. So those three all were sort of examples where there was an opportunity to share samples between two different labs. In mycology, we had an example of something on our scope of accreditation where we'd really struggled to find anyone else to share samples with. So in this case, we just set up an internal blind test. And we set up a panel of 20 samples for that, and those were tested. They were strawberry petioles tested using ELISA. And we also then followed that up, a similar process up to look at the morphological ID as well. So all of those approaches that we used were, there weren't hundreds of samples. It was very simple. But I think the important thing to mention is that underpinning those exchanges of samples is also a lot of other monitoring that we're doing. So the accreditation body are obviously looking for us to participate in exchanging samples with other labs, but we're also giving them reassurance on top of that with other monitoring that we're doing behind the scenes. So we're extending the samples that we've prepared for doing exchanges. We've used those also as internal competency assessments. At FERA, we've introduced acceptance criteria for reference materials, and we're using control charts as well to sort of do ongoing trending and monitoring of reference materials. The example on there is just for, I think that's PEPMV and ELISA that we've got there. And then whenever necessary, we're using other methods to retest as well to confirm positive results. So there's a lot of other things that are providing reassurance to the accreditation body as well as the exchange of samples. This is quick. So just to bring it all together, so UCAS, so far, I'm saying so far because accreditation bodies are never entirely happy. They'll always find something else to look at. But so far they've been content, certainly at FERA and I think at SASA as well, with the work that we've done in exchanging samples. We're aiming to continue to do this each year. I think we've got a limited range of organisms that we can actually exchange, but we'll certainly try and keep doing this on an annual basis. As I said, we've tried to keep this really simple. We've not set up hundreds and hundreds of samples. We've done something that's doable that we can keep doing with the resource and the time that we have. I think as well, we've not used things like assigned values. We've accepted the fact that any kind of statistical significance is just not there because it's just too small. Where we've had no options for sample exchange, we've got what we and the accreditation body think is a robust internal process. Something that's we found, well, certainly FERA's found quite useful is that an EA document, which gives quite a lot of information on setting up small inter-laboratory comparisons. That's quite a useful document. And as I say, we've embedded some internal processes as well to underpin all of that work to give reassurance to the accreditation bodies. So that's a lot of work that's been distilled down into 10 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Do you have a question for Rebecca?
Yeah, thank you. Just to clarify about disappointment about the non-EU members. That indeed the EURL, the main partners of the EURL, the main aim of this EURL is indeed to test the proficiency of the European Union NRF. So the main target or the main partners are those NRF. So as we have seen in some of the presentation, this organization is quite challenging. We've seen it with it's sometimes very difficult to organize that, so we miss you a lot.
Oh, thank you.
And told me that really you have now to be fair with all the countries, so we cannot accept without any justification the inclusion of what we call those countries. So, maybe that I wanted to say. So that's why we ask for justification. Otherwise, the EPPO, which are not huge institutions, nor funded as European Union, could not be able to accept all the requests from all the world that leads to a form of proficiency test for keeping that accreditation. The EPPO is not desk, worldwide desk office open to accreditation, to organize the proficiency test for keeping accreditation. That's a kind of thing, but it's also money, the nerves of the world in French. Thank you.
But it's not a question, it's more a comment. I think it's rather reassuring to see that UCAS is positively considering these approaches, because and this will be important for everybody here. And so I know this can be a lot of work, but is there any way that you and Susan, you see me coming. So it would really be nice to share this experience. Is there a possibility to write a short article for the EPPO bulletin on what you've done, your approach, and it doesn't need to be very long, but that gives a basis, and that can be shared, and why not discuss with your own accreditation bodies more than relying on a presentation. Now, it's great.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Susan and Karen, they're not looking super happy, but they're not going, no. So yes, we get together and do something. I think that'd be a really good idea. Brilliant.
Promoting bias, and it's true for everybody else. I mean, this is good to share this type of experience, maybe more difficult to share in a very scientific journal, but more appropriate for the EPPO bulletin.
And I think actually something that I realised from a question earlier this morning was that, that they're obviously sort of the high priority pests that are on everyone's radar, but there are things, for us like Coleoptricum, which just aren't really very trendy anymore, and people aren't that bothered about making PT schemes for them. So, some of that real, I don't want to say boring, but the stuff that's a bit out of fashion now, that's still important. So being able to find a way of making something for those is good.
Thank you.
Thank you.